Good day, folks, and welcome back to the Anorak Review Show with your host, the Anorak. And welcome back, people, to Anoraknoween. And today we're looking at an album that pretty much has even less connections to anything horror-themed than the friggin' Iron Maiden album. No, today instead we're looking at an Elton John album. And one that many would consider his weakest, if not his worst. You see, several months ago, I looked at his A1 album, The Fox, an album made during a period where Elton John albums were kind of obscure and not making big charts or anything, and it was before he would make a big comeback with Too Low for Zero in '83. And here, we're come to a period after Too Low for Zero, where his albums were still making some good charts and singles, but never reaching that high peak that Too Low for Zero accomplished. And 5 years after The Fox and 3 years after Too Low for Zero, we come to an album that is considered the low point for Elton John himself. And even Elton John himself would consider it his least favourite to work on, saying, and I quote, "Gus Sturgeon, the producer, did his best, but you can't work with a loony." So, when Elton John himself admits that he can be a bit of a nutter from time to time, you know something's got to be bad. Although his fellow songwriter, Bernie Taupin, believed that the '97 album, The Big Picture, is the worst of Elton's albums. But I'll probably look into that another day. For now, though, let's take a look at his 1986 album, Leather Jackets. And the cover itself is pretty substandard. It's basically an Andy Warhol-esque collage of the same picture of presumably Elton wearing, well, a leather jacket in different ranges of psychedelic-ish colours. And if you thought Elton himself admitting this album to be bad wasn't, well, bad enough, even he admitted that the cover itself was probably not the best, saying, again and I quote, "Very butch, but a total disaster. I wasn't a budgie, I was married, and it was just one big bag of coke after another." So from that in mind, it was probably a bit of a rushed cover itself. And the back itself features Elton himself and fellow musicians and his crew, all dressed in the kind of 80s punky leather kind of motorbiker kind of fashion, almost like they're trying to do some kind of impersonation of Motorhead or something. I mean, it looks cool from a photography perspective and a very cover design perspective, but I'll admit it's probably nothing worth writing home about, nor is it really all that terrible. I can understand Elton may not find this the most memorable or the most iconic, but then again, a lot of good albums may not have the most best of covers either. But with all that aside, let's take a listen to Elton John's Leather Jacket and see if it really is as bad as it is now, as many people considered it back then. Starting the album is the title song, Leather Jackets, a basic 80s synth-pop tune about the fashion and glamorization of the sort of biker culture, especially the leather jackets they'd often wear, and how Danger Girls love them. Though, well, if Danger Girls really do or rather did like leather jackets, they certainly weren't enough to save this album. I joke, but honestly, this song alone isn't too bad, honestly. It's a bit catchy, the quality isn't abhorrent, though the production of it I might get into in a moment. But overall, it's basically a standard pop tune, and it's pretty standard by Elton John standards. I can understand if compared to his more famous albums, this one more forgettable, at least compared to his more popular songs. And of course, sure, it uses a lot of synthesizers, but that doesn't necessarily make it bad. It's just how you utilize them. And though if I also were to nitpick, most of the lyrics here, especially in the verses, are a bit kind of vague, a bit of a ramble, and I dare even say a bit all over the place. Especially when they singing about how anything but leather jackets, but needing to get things better with chrome. Although some of the lyrics here are something worth analysing, like with phrases such as, "The king ain't dead, he's just asleep somewhere in the afterlife," which could be a reference to Elvis Presley, who was considered the king of rock and roll. And there's the question of, is the golden age dead and gone, which could refer to the golden age of music, or even the golden age of Elton John's music and his career. I guess kind of being self-aware of how kind of low and kind of bad this is supposed to be, but I digress. Then there's the line of, "When fashion changes makes you change, keep the faith and don't waste another nickel on another name." I guess it kind of refers to how what we wear can sometimes change our personalities, and also how Elton John himself would often wear these elaborate costumes in live concerts and gigs and all that. And at the same time, it kind of tells us that even if it does change our personalities, we shouldn't have to be overbeared by it. We shouldn't waste all our lives and money on just trying to change our identities. Sometimes our identities aren't solely defined by how we look or what we wear. Sometimes it's how we act and how we treat others, and honestly, that's not entirely all that bad a message when you think about it. Next is Hoopa Fire, a more soft rock song, which I actually think is kind of underrated in my opinion. It's a decent balance of synth, guitars, and classic Elton John piano. In this, Elton sings about how some people prefer the simple things in life, like nylon guitars and long walks on beaches, and maybe spending some time binge watching on Netflix. But anyways, they also, however, like to have a bit of a thrill seek every now and then, take some risks and have a little bit of adrenaline now and then, represented by how they would like to go through a hoop of fire, which is, I think, a kind of a reference to those rings of fires you see in a circus, you know, the ones where they have the lions like jump through and I don't know, I think it's probably referring to that, or just a general metaphorical ring of fire or something, I don't know. But anyways, the chorus comes along where he kind of expresses how difficult it is to read someone's feelings and desires if they don't exactly talk to each other. Although I don't really know exactly how one can read a pulse like a hoop of fire, so a bit of a confusing metaphor there. But aside from that, this is a very decent song from Elton John that I think deserves a bit more love, and I think kind of gets a bit more hate, or at least some apathy or indifference. Then there's Don't Trust That Woman, a collaborative effort between Elton John and Cher. Yes, the Cher. And on the surface, that sounds pretty interesting. However, in the song itself, Cher doesn't actually sing in it one bit. She's mostly credited as a co-writer, along with another person credited as Lady Chalk Ice, which is actually Elton John himself, just in a different silly persona, or like a pseudonym or something. But anyways, yeah, I think it's a bit of a shame that Cher doesn't sing in this at all, since I think there's potential between the two for them to work off each other, Both are known for a bit of a campiness in their music, and both are big icons dating as far back as the 70s. But anyways, in this, Elton sings about a particular woman, how they're a real bullbuster and they'll burn you and turn you into toys and all that. So basically, it's similar to something like Easy Lover by Philip Bailey and Phil Collins. Not exactly a rip-off per se, just they're both warnings about, well, a deceptive woman. All that aside, this is actually another actually pretty fun, light-hearted song. There's a bit of a funkiness to it, a bit of a post-disco vibe to it. And honestly, if I didn't know any better, I could have sworn this was from the like late 70s of Elton John's career. It's it's more fun and dancey compared to the previous songs, so this is another one I wouldn't say outright bad in that respect. After that, we have Go It Alone. And this is a very unique Elton John song. A very fast-paced, gritty, rocky, industrial piece of a track. And at least gritty by Elton John standards. It reminds me a bit of something out of Devo or Sparks. And lyrically, there's a slight sense of rebellion and independence. How Elton kind of sings about how he has this desire to kind of build up this home again with someone new, and how he's kind of better off without you, implying some kind of breakup of sorts, and kind of going into metaphors like the cards we play and the spades they kind of dug up my grave and so on and so forth. The music itself does give off a very punky 80s thriller vibe to it, almost like something you hear out of a car chase sequence or something. Honestly, I think it would have been better off as the lead singer of the album. It may not have helped the album itself much, but still, I think this would have been a good way to kind of sell a new song to people and kind of experiment with a new sound that Elton could do. Sure, some Elton John purists may not like something like this, but honestly, I kind of don't mind it when someone like Elton kind of gets out of the comfort zone and dabbles in these different kinds of music. It kind of mixes things up a bit, and honestly, as someone who doesn't mind a bit of that kind of industrial sound, I think this song is another underrated song of his, in my opinion. Side 1 ends with Gypsy Heart. After the sort of industrial sound of Go It Alone, here Elton returns to his comfort zone of bluesy soul pop and soul rock. In this, his signature piano definitely takes the spotlight here, albeit accompanied by various guitars and backing vocals. Here, he sings about how he's in love with this person who has a gypsy heart, and yet this person doesn't return any feelings to him, but he waits with hope that someday this person will return his feelings, knowing full well that no one will love this person any better than he would. This is another underrated song in my opinion that I think deserves a bit more love, or at least doesn't deserve the hate that may come its way. It switches rather quite seamlessly from being calm and soothing to grand and uplifting, and the guitars and the backing vocals here really help in giving this some extra layers of texture, and help it build its kind of romantic sound and mood. It's almost like it's almost like those kind of love songs you hear at the end credits of an old 80s or 90s romance comedy film or something. And in a way, the lyrics do kind of fit that as well, being about love and returning feelings. And like I said, and like with Go It Alone, this is another song I think would have been good, if not great, as a potential single of the album. And and even though it fades out, it is a good way to close out the first side of the album. And so far, this album doesn't really sound all that bad. I don't know what people hated about it. Though I guess there's side 2, so maybe the problems shift over there.